Next up, we have another collaboration between Ken Griffin, Sam Powell and Tom Hardwick, and the launch of a new online catalogue. So I don't know if you want to start sharing your screen while I introduce you.
I have nothing to share at the minute.
Oh, right, okay. Well, Ken, you need no introduction. You're our collections access manager. Tom Hardwick is an Egyptologist and curator and has worked with Egyptian collections in the UK, USA and Egypt. He's a specialist in pharaonic Egyptian sculpture and iconography and has worked extensively on the history of collecting Egyptian objects. And Sam Powell is the creator and director of Abaset Collections Limited. She holds master's qualifications in both archaeology and Egyptology and is about to commence her PhD researching wooden figurines. Sam is a volunteer at the Egypt Centre and has been for many years. And she also moderates the museum's online courses and does much, much more for us. I'd like to add personally, Sam is also a busy mum of 2 young sons, and she's known by Carolyn, myself and Ken as Superwoman. Anyway, over to you 3.
Thank you very much for that, Wendy. And what we're going to be presenting over the next half hour or so is really, again, a collaborative effort. And this conference is really showing how much you can get done with collaboration with the various talks and things that we've been showing. This is the final big reveal that I've been mentioning over the last few weeks for people. Yet it's something that was only really started 6 months or so ago when I was having a conversation with Tom via Facebook. And it was mainly due to the list of Boscawen, back to him again, who was mentioned on Wednesday. And in particular, there's a list of objects that Wellcome purchased in 1911 from the collection of the great collection of Hilton Price. 600 items were purchased at this time, and they're largely small objects that are not ones that are particularly well described in the catalogue. In fact, in the catalogue, they rarely have their Hilton Price number. And so this was quite interesting to have this additional data. And Tom suggested at the time that it would be nice to, because I was having this list transcribed by some of our excellent volunteers, to make an updated version of the well-known Charles von Sicklen concordance of the lot numbers with the Hilton Price numbers. And so in the evenings, I started doing this. And a few months later, just in June of this year, I asked Sam whether it would be possible to create a new database relating to the Hilton Price material. So this is what we're going to be presenting now, and I'm going to pass over to Tom, who's going to give us the background of Hilton Price and a lot of the treasures which are going to be involved in this database. So over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, how the hell do I do this? Share screen, PowerPoint, share, and fingers crossed, this should be it. Thank you very much, Ken. All good?
Yep, all fine.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Sam and everyone. I'm afraid I haven't been able to make it to the conference this week. I'm in Cairo at the moment, putting interesting objects in very boring packing cases for an exhibition that will be opening in a couple of months. So I've been unable to attend the conference, but I'm looking forward to catching up when recordings are available. So F.G. Hilton Price, banker, collector, antiquary, father, forms, as I'm sure you're now sick of hearing after 3 days, he forms one of the largest Egyptian collections of the 19th century, and the largest single grouping of it survives intact, although dispersed, in the Wellcome collection. He was born in London, August 20th, 1842, the son of Frederick Price and Louisa Timpson. Hilton is one of his Christian names, but seems to have been promoted to become part of his surname, practically, if not legally, early in his adult life. Daddy Price is a banker, He eventually becomes a partner in the London private bank Child & Co, in the same place now as it was then on Fleet Street. And Hilton Price joins him soon after leaving school at Child's. He doesn't go to university. By 1887, middle-aged Hilton Price was well-to-do, married, 2 kids. His daughter, showing his antiquarian interests, is called Ethelred. And like his father, he's a partner at Child's. He becomes senior acting partner in 1901. As a prosperous man, he's in this new house in Collingham Gardens in Kensington, number 17. But 20 years later, 30 years later, when the neighbourhood is a little more down at heel, Howard Carter moves in at number 19, and his money lets him pursue his antiquarian interests. He digs on the Isle of Wight, and collects Egyptian and British objects, many of which he researches and publishes himself. So for fans of Private Eye, Me and My Spoon, Hilton Price wrote a book on spoons. He also brought his managerial abilities to bear on the antiquarian world. He's a staunch committee man. The Geological Society, the Anthropological Institute, the Society of Biblical Archaeology, the Egypt Exploration Fund. He becomes president in 1905, Flinders Petrie's Egyptian Research Account, and finally the Society of Antiquaries. He becomes director in 1894. As in Hilton Price's own words, the adoption of the overland route to India via Egypt and the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 have drawn the attention of the civilized world to Egypt to a remarkable degree, Hilton Price in the first volume of his catalogue. You're all aware that the last third of the 19th century sees financial and political interest in Egypt literally explode, stemming from Muhammad Ali's modernization of the country and his heirs' construction of the Suez Canal. British armed intervention to quash a rebellion in 1882 leads to the so-called Veiled Protectorate, encouraging further British investment in Egypt, railways, irrigation, telegraphs, funded by British investors and British banks like Hilton Price and Childs. So it's in this milieu that Hilton Price forms his Egyptian collection. Surviving documentation shows that he was already a seasoned collector by the early 1880s. He has a lot of fun. He exhibits Egyptian objects at show and tells of the Society for Biblical Archaeology. He's a committee man and lender to the 1895 exhibition of the Art of Ancient Egypt at the Burlington Fine Arts Club, if you can, our cursors visible. Anyway, this is his Harpocrates and some other objects. He funds Petrie's excavations from the 1880s onwards. Later, John Garstang's excavations at Abydos, Beni Hassan and Esna, getting a share of objects. He set up and hosted a hieroglyphic reading group, which Wallace Budd, the young Wallace Budd, tutors, and he organizes subscriptions to defray the cost of turning Budge's transcriptions into a book. There he is. You can see other names, Towery White, Jesse Howarth, Lord Amherst, Mrs. Goodison, Rider Haggard. And this seems to be a family passion. His daughter Ethelred has a whole series of letters she writes to him in hieroglyphs. This one is dated 1885. She was 13 or 14. And it's this great mixture of Egyptian words and then, your name in hieroglyphs, letter by letter. She says, Yinak, I went in to British Museum Heru today. But maybe this was the only, maybe his Ethelred liked this, maybe this was the only way she could get through to her father, who knows. Hilton Price, as befits a banker, speculates with his collections and regularly consigned antiquities for sale at Sotheby's, the leading British auction house for antiquities, continually expanding and upgrading his collection. Publishes in print 2 volumes of his catalogue in 1897 and 1908, over 5,000 numbered objects or groups of objects. This is not, however, the earliest documentation we have of his collections. As Ken mentioned, there are 4 volumes with one of his descendants, which are the manuscript catalogue of his collection up to 1894. Although they're bound up in 1894, these aren't books. They didn't start out as notebooks. They are loose sheets of paper which had evidently been written over quite some time and then organised and bound together in 1894. And the lovely frontispiece to volume 1 is dated 1883, signed at the bottom by J.P. Emsley, a member of the Folklore Society, the Topographical Society. That's where he and Hilton Price associate. There's this wonderful, Emsley sends this as a thank you letter to Hilton Price for a copy of the printed catalogue in 1897. Going into the manuscript volumes, you can see that they're organised differently. So the printed catalogue and the manuscript catalogue on the left and on the right, you can see instead of a single run of numbers, 1 to 5,000, you get alphabetic classes. So A1, A2, B1, and so on. And many, if not most, of the manuscript catalogue objects are illustrated. So these are 2440 and which one is this? Ken will remember 3 and 2438. You can see how they're different. The manuscript catalogue entries go into more detail than the printed catalogue, as you saw just now. And then here, where a 2-line description in print has pictures in the manuscript, along with much more information about the history. So being given by Canon Greenwell, the antiquary, he had acquired them from the Reverend Henry Stobart, who travels Egypt in 1854 to 55. The objects themselves, the 2 plaques, are still extant with Hilton Price's numbers and notes on the back. And I was able to reunite them with the catalogue a few years back in the exhibition at the Atkinson in Southport a few years ago. To give another example of how the manuscript catalogue goes into more detail than the printed catalogue, the Hilton Price's stone weight inscribed for Hufu, which is not a piece I've been able to trace beyond its sale in the McGregor collection to Percy Newbury. Hilton Price has 2 stabs at describing it in the manuscript version. And in the first one, he says, bought in Cairo by Henry Wallace for Flinders Petrie, who brought it to me for £10 in 1891. And this now introduces another person into Hilton Price's network, the artist Henry Wallace, who is a tastemaker, fixer, collector, dealer. So he's now someone we can add into the mix. Hilton Price published 2 volumes of his collection, second in 1908, no preliminary notes like the manuscript for Catalogue Volume 1, for Volume 2. He dies in 1909, and his collection was put up for sale at auction for the benefit of his family by his colleague Charles Hercules Reed, keeper at the British Museum, and Hilton Price's colleague as president of the antiquaries. Hilton Price's collection is of an antiquarian bent, most visible in the fact that he has 121 Eyes of Horus all in a row, and by 1911 fashions were changing. People wanted art rather than material culture, and this added to the frustrations of William Talbot Ready, who was cataloguing the collection for sale at Sotheby's. The text of Talbot Ready's sale catalogue draws on the published catalogues, but naturally doesn't include as much information as the published catalogues, and lists and groups objects in different combinations. And these are groupings not to inform necessarily, but rather to sell well. And the thing which is keeping us all occupied today is goes back to the fact that Talbot Ready doesn't include the Hilton price number with every lot object description. Only around 40% of the published objects, of the objects in the catalogue, have their published their printed catalogue numbers listed in their descriptions in the auction catalogue. However, in order to help viewers at the sale and packers afterwards, Talbot Ready and people at Sotheby's put labels with the lot number. So we're in the thick of the Hilton price auction in July 1911. Wellcome is the largest purchaser of the largest single purchaser of objects. He gets 81 lots with 641 objects for 282 quid. So that's 5% of the lots with 10% of the objects for 2.3% of the total cost. So he's buying a lot of cheap stuff in bulk. When you look at another buyer, William Permain, buying for the American William Randolph Hearst, Citizen Kane, he spends £1,000 on 150 objects. So Hearst spends 5 times more money than Wellcome on a quarter of the number of objects. So buying for quality rather than quantity. As I think we're all aware, by now, Boscawen catalogues the Hilton price objects for Wellcome, this inventory, which now gives objects an HP number, which references the auction lot number, sometimes the collection number, and then puts these on little round labels saying HP 530, and there you can see the auction number saying it's one of 7 objects in lot 736. If Boscawen's inventory gives a detailed listing of Wellcome's objects, then annotated copies of the auction catalogue itself give information about other purchasers and prices. So you see here 4 lots in a row for Bourne, among the cheapest on that page, so Wellcome stocking up. And a purchaser at the sale is the Reverend William McGregor, who you've all heard of earlier today. And his own annotated copy of the Hilton price catalogue has names of purchasers and his own annotations. So here you see lot 565, an unusually large and fine figure of a hippopotamus. McGregor initials it, he buys it for 90 sterling, but he doesn't buy it himself. He buys it through Mrs. Cooper, who is daughter Ethelred, who it seems bought this at the sale and then passed it on to McGregor. McGregor had obviously knew the piece. It's one of the few objects not in his own collection that's published in Henry Wallace. Wallace's catalogue of McGregor's collection. So McGregor couldn't pass up the chance to buy it after Hilton Price's death. Turning to the manuscript catalogue, you can see it was bought at Mr. Myers's sale for 19 guineas. So we have Hilton Price's original cost, 19 guineas. It sells for 90 sterling. And then at McGregor's sale in 1922, it sells for £180. It doubles in price and is bought by Maria Munson for the Glyptotek in Copenhagen. So where is all of this taking us? All of these bits of information. Thanks to Ken, Sam, and their team, we've now got all the tools to study Hilton Price's collection in greater detail than before. There are sort of immediate narrower benefits in this, such as you can now find, as Ken and Sam have been showing, you can find objects that were once in the Hilton Price collection, and you didn't know that before. I found this inlay of a lion, which is not illustrated in the printed catalogue or the sale catalogue, but is in the manuscript catalogue. And then it says Bubastis. A note at the front of the manuscript catalogue says, Bubastis means I bought it from Clark Bay, who collected for me at that place. And that is Mr. Charles Clark, the residence director of the telegraphic service in Zagazig. So there you go, Imperial Overreach, who would be well placed to go digging in nearby Tel Basta. But the wider benefits of this, as with transcribed welcome, which was great to hear about, should allow us to gain a better understanding of the texture of Hilton Price's collection and the way in which its formation and dispersal reflect changing tastes and values in the modern engagement with ancient Egypt. Watch this space. Thank you.
See my screen okay? I'll take that.
Yes, it's working.
Fantastic.
Yes, Sam.
Fab, thank you, Wendy. So this is just a quick preview. I'm very aware of how little time we've got left in the day and everyone's probably ready to go to the pub at this point. So I'm just going to give you a very, very quick overview of how to use this fantabulous new online collection and how to search for objects in it. So when you come to the home page, I'll share this link in a moment when we've finished. You've got several options here. You can find out more about the project here. Here is a fantastic bit of information about Hilton Price and his collecting habits. Thank you very much to Tom for that one. We have a list of all the wonderful collaborators and supporters that have helped us with this project so far. We really, really hope to add more of you to the list if possible. There's a little how to use guide here. So there's also a PDF and a video that will talk you through pretty much what I'm going to tell you now. And this fab tab I will open to show you. We have some brilliant links to the printed catalogues 1 and 2. We have a copy of the auction catalogue here. We have the list of objects from the Welcome collection, the concordance, which obviously Tom will be talking about a little bit more in a minute. And we hope to very soon add the unpublished manuscripts, which will be absolutely fantastic to do. So if I come back to the home page, I'm just going to show you how we begin our searches. So since we're talking about the Welcome collection, I'm going to start typing in Bourne, as Charles Henry Bourne was one of the buyers for Welcome. And as you can see, I don't have to type the whole word. We have drop-down categories as we enter the data, so it automatically comes up. We don't have to worry about spelling mistakes. And we can see this was one of the buyers. So I'm going to click on him. And it comes up with all the objects. You can see the buyer button has been highlighted in gold, so we know we've got a filter of Bourne. We can scroll down and see all the objects. So please, anyone that's associated with any material culture collections, do have a look through, see if anything jumps out at you. There is an option to press image available, and you can see the ones that have got images. As Ken said at the start, we're in the very early days of this project, so we haven't got all the data completely in the catalogue yet, so do keep checking back for more information. So to give you an example, I'm going to search for, we've been talking about animals a lot. If we want to look for a frog, we have these brilliant little drop-down bars here. So we could choose frog from there. And I also only want ones made of, let's say, pottery and terracotta. So I've got 2 categories open. We press go. And here we have a lovely example from the Egypt Centre popping up. To start a new search, I press reset. And another nice example I'm going to show you in a bit more detail is a model hoe. If I was looking for a model hoe, the things like cat as well. If you start typing in cat in a normal search engine, you would get catalogue, catacomb, anything with CAT in the words. And you can see here, I've got the option of shoe, a phoenix, but the one we want to look for is a model tool, a hoe. And we should have several of these. The one I'm going to show you in more detail is this lovely example here from Aberdeen. So we just click on the picture and that should open up for us. And as you can see, we've got loads and loads of information about this object. The pictures will just continue to flick across. If you click on those, you can expand them and look at them in more detail as well. Thank you very much to Aberdeen for giving us permission to use their images. So we have the current location, we have the Hilton Price number. This is the printed catalogue number that we searched by initially. For object types, we've been able to put in multiple object types. So it's a hoe, it's a model tool, but it's also from a foundation deposit. So we've included that in there as well, in case you're searching for that. We have a date that we're searching for. We have the material, provenance, and sizes as well. So this first description, there's several descriptions within here. All of these will be searched by the search bar, so we know we're not missing any details out. So this is an up-to-date description given for the object. We then have the catalogue description. This is from the printed catalogue that Tom was speaking about. We have some further reading, and this very nifty bit here, we can actually link to the Aberdeen online collection, and it has a nice little preview as well where it's available, and we can see what they have about the object, which is a really nice way of collaborating with where the objects have ended up now. In object history, we have the old Hilton price number. This is the number from the written manuscript and the description given in that manuscript. We have the option to look at the auction and which auction lot, and we've also transcribed the auction description as well. We know who bought it, how much they paid for it, and any former collections that it's been in. So as you can see, this is a really, really good way of pulling all these different bits of information together in a really easily accessible way. Now, you could also share this by pressing this button here, and it gives you the option to copy to clipboard or share on various social media platforms. If you're looking through one of these objects and you're somebody and you spot something and you think, yep, that's definitely a Hilton Price object, I need to let this project know, there's a feedback about this object button here that you can press and send us an email. Please do let us know if you recognize any of the objects. The other nifty feature, if you're anything like me, when you're doing research, you end up going down numerous rabbit holes. If I now decided I was very interested in the New Kingdom, any of these buttons that are highlighted, you can click on, and that will give you a filter of everything from the collection updating to the New Kingdom. If again, I only want to choose ones with images because everybody likes looking at images, I can click that button there and press go. And we'll have the objects with images come up. So the plan is that this software is really easy to use. It's a fabulous resource for trying to piece together this dispersed collection. And we'd be very, very grateful for anyone who's willing to engage and help us with it.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Sam. It's just back to me for just 3 final slides to summarize what we have done so far. As both Sam and Tom said, this is very, very much a work in progress. The database itself was only really initiated back in June with the idea of even creating a list of the objects back in 3 months or so prior to that. So still bear in mind with us, it is a work in progress. Already, so I've got the timer on this annoyingly. Already we have 1,277 objects from the roughly 5,200, which have been added into the database from their published catalogue, with around 120 which have been linked to their current museums, 23 museums in total. This is a very, very small number, but it's not something that we've been actively pursuing at present. We're really trying to get the data into the database first before we start contacting museums and getting the objects in there. In total, there's 430 welcome objects. There's the 426 which were shown by Sam. But then there's additional objects in the Egypt Centre collection which came to Welcome, which Welcome bought at subsequent sales in 1931, for example. And 663 of the items have images. So do search through the images. You'll perhaps recognize some of the objects that you've got there. The manuscripts, the 4 manuscripts that are in the possession of the great-grandson of Hilton Price, they have now been scanned just a few weeks ago. Thanks again to the Richard Burton Archives for the permission to use their scanning software. And they are currently being transcribed. 1 volume has been transcribed by an excellent volunteer, and we'll hopefully get the other 3 transcribed and added as soon as possible. Like any projects like this, it can only be successful with cooperation. And really, as I've said, this is, I think, the main thing to come out of this conference is the cooperation between the different institutions, the museum, as well as, of course, the Welcome. So I'm calling upon anybody working in museums here. Do you have any Hilton Price objects in your collection? If so, get in touch. Have a look at the virtual catalogue. See if you recognize any of the objects. Ideally, it would be nice to have photographs of the objects that we could include onto the site, such as what we had with Aberdeen. And I know this isn't going to be possible for most museums due to copyright reasons, but hopefully some museums will give us permission to include the images. We will, of course, always put links directly through to the museum catalogues so that anybody researching the collection will be able to find the original source in the whatever museum it might be. So do get in touch with either Samurai and the various email addresses that you see there. There's certainly lots of potential for expanding on this project. It could even include a larger database, bringing together different collections, including, for example, McGregor, who has been mentioned multiple times over the few days, but that's something to consider for the future. There's lots of people to thank here. The Egypt Centre, although this wasn't initially seen as an Egypt Centre project, this was more of a kind of a pet project of mine. Very grateful for the Egypt Centre that they've taken on this project and very much supported it. Of course, the Sam Powell from Abbaset Collections for the creation of the database, to Tom Hardwick, who we just had, and the great-grandson of Hilton Price, Robert Cooper. Richard Burton Archives for their scanner. Charles Van Sicklen for the permission to include the concordance of his text, of his numbers into the database itself. Of course, the different museums who have provided images as well as data from their objects: Manchester, Edinburgh, the World Museum in Liverpool, as well as Edinburgh. It's just a few museums so far, but we will be working with lots more in the future. And of course, a lot of this project couldn't exist without our wonderful transcribers and data entry people, Catherine Bishop, Angela Gray, Timothy Jones. Of course, Sam has also been entering some, and John Rogers. So again, thank you everyone who has been involved in this project, and we hope now with the launch of it that it'll be able to grow, and perhaps by the end of the year we'll have most, if not all, of the catalogue entries, at least from the published catalogues, entered into the database itself. And then the hunt goes on to try and virtually connect them with the objects themselves, with the objects with the catalogues themselves. So thank you to everyone, and I think we've eaten into enough of the discussion time, so I will stop there.